So recently I finished going through all of the Witcher books and I really enjoyed them. So I decided I wanted to check out the Witcher TV show to see if it's really as bad as people are saying. So I've already gone through all the episodes already, but I recorded myself after seeing each season. You'll see that in the time code, the timestamps, the chapters down below. So you guys can skip around to see whatever you want. And also because I have all the background of the books and The Witcher 3 now on me, I also wanted to see how the enjoyment of my experience compares to the enjoyment of someone who has had no other contact besides the TV show. So I brought in my brother to get his thoughts on The Witcher as well. So after you get my thoughts, you'll get his thoughts as well. And I think, personally, little spoiler alert, this might be, honestly, the worst adaptation I have ever seen. This is what I have ever seen. May not be the worst in the world, but speaking of which, let me know in the comments down below if you guys, like, what's the worst adaptation you guys have ever seen? I'm curious to know. It's an interesting thing. So let's get into season 1. As of the recording of this particular clip, I have watched the season 1 of The Witcher, and I have not watched seasons 2 or 3. So I'm going to talk about season 1 right now. So here's going to be the good, the bad, and the nitpicky. So the good. Let's talk about the good. First of all, actors for Geralt Henry Cavill's great as Geralt. I'll be honest, I don't remember the names of most of the actors. Just Henry Cavill. So I'll have to refer to them as the character names instead. The second thing is Jaskier, or as I'm going to be referring to him in the rest of this video, Dandelion. He's called Dandelion in the English translation of the books and in the video games. So that's why I'm going to be calling him Dandelion. Now, the interesting thing about this is that his Polish name is Jaskier, which literally translates to buttercup. But the English translators, they're like, yeah, we don't want to use buttercup. That doesn't quite work. And neither did the Netflix people who were doing the Netflix series. They didn't want to use buttercup either. So the people who are doing the Netflix, they're like, we'll just stick to the Polish name. And the people who translated the book were like, kept with the spirit of the name, which was a yellow flower. And they used Dandelion instead. So that's kind of where that name discrepancy is. I'm calling him Dandelion for the rest of this. So just beware. And I think Dandelion was done very, very well. I really enjoyed that. I did also enjoy seeing Sodden Hill. I thought that was pretty cool. My mind was literally just a hilltop and like just something weird. So it was cool to see some of that battle. I did think that a lot of Geralt's story was pretty good. This is where it gets a little nitpicky. They change things a lot with his story, but usually it pretty much stays true to what you have in the book. They just change some details and whatnot. So it's like, oh, I noticed those changes. It was fine. It stayed mostly faithful. Even like one of my bigger complaints still stayed mostly faithful. As for the first season, I would say it's good. It's good. You know, I think it's not perfect adaptation for this. It's no Lord of the Rings. It's no Dune. 2020's Dune. It's not. What are some other adaptations? Harry Potter. That's a pretty good adaptation. Granted, I wouldn't know because I haven't read any Harry Potter books. Actually, I've read the first one. That's it. But it's not that, but it is still good enough, I guess. Now, here's some of the things that I wasn't so hot on. First of all, the timeline is actually kind of screwed up a bit. Here's a few things where they kind of mix up the timeline. First of all, according to the TV show, Yennefer's probably like 40 something years old, when in the book she's like 80 to 100 years old. Cintra's fall was after the Battle of Sodden. I think the Battle of Sodden happened maybe almost a year before the fall of Cintra happened. Granted, Brocculon Forest, that whole story was just completely changed. They changed a lot of timeline in this, because Ciri met Geralt in Brocculon Forest, which is what they adapted into this as they just had her go into Brocculon Forest right after Cintra's fall, but instead she met Geralt there before the fall of Cintra. So they had to it's the format of how they were doing this. They had Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri. The way they were doing all of that, they had to give Ciri something to do, so they had to, in my opinion, kind of butcher that story. Before Geralt actually took Ciri, he came into contact with her 4 times, including the wedding, which was shown in episode, what was it? I think that was episode 2 or 3. So you have that was the first time. The second time he came back 10 years after that, after Pravetta's wedding, and to claim the child. Or sorry, he didn't. He went to refuse to claim the child, and then the third time was in Brocculon Forest 2 years later, and then the fourth time is the one that we see at the end of the season, which is with the farmer, or with the merchant, his wife. So that's. And it was crazy in the book. It was crazy. It was a wild reveal for me, and to me that kind of felt diminished because they had to change a bunch of stuff, and I wasn't a huge fan of that changes. Another big complaint for me is Yennefer. I don't think she really just doesn't feel like she's as powerful, confident, or mature as she is in even, like, let's say Witcher 3 or the books. Like, she is like portrayed as one of the top sorceresses. Like, she's like 80 to 100 years old. She's like one of the top sorceresses, super attractive, super confident, super powerful, all of that. And they just don't portray it the same. And I think Yennefer's introduction really, like, because they introduced her in, like, as a hunchback, which is like, okay. In the books, she's basically introduced in the story from episode 5 with the djinn. That's how she's introduced. And, like, she's brought up, and I think it might be it might be the writing, it might be the performance of the actress, or it might be a combination of both. But I don't think Yennefer in the TV show is nearly as good of a character as she was in the books or even Witcher 3. And that'll do it for my season 1 recap. Let's go ahead and see what my brother thinks about this.
So what are your thoughts on season 1?
I thought season was pretty good. A little bit kind of slow, but necessary for all the character building with Geralt and Ciri, Yennefer, and then some of the other guys like Istrid.
And one question I had about probably the time frame is, for Geralt, this is technically happening over a period of decades. Does it, like, at all feel like that?
No, like when you first watch it for the first time and everything, it definitely seems like it's all happening on the same timeline. To be honest with you, it's definitely taken me rewatching the series multiple times over and over again to really be able to kind of put the timelines together and understand that some of them are kind of flashbacks prior to all this happening, and then and just trying to piece everything together in your head.
So I just finished watching season 2 of The Witcher. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. Let's get into it. Okay, so starting with episode 1. Episode 1 is now, okay, here's the thing. season 1 is an adaptation of the books The Last Wish and The Sword of Destiny. That's what that season is. It's an adaptation of those 2 books. And they're just a bunch of short stories. And season 2 is supposed to be an adaptation of the book Blood of Elves. Supposed to be is the key term here, because it's not. This is not an adaptation of The Witcher. This isn't The Witcher at all. This is barely a shadow of The Witcher. Everything is wrong here. Everything. Okay. Episode 1 is Episode 1 is an adaptation of the short story The Grain of Truth, and that happens before Geralt meets Ciri at all. So this totally wiped that off the map. Okay, that wasn't part of Blood of Elves. That wasn't part of it at all. Okay, then we get into the rest of it, and as the series went on, as the season went on, this kept getting worse and worse and worse until they have destroyed basically everything about everything about the story is gone, is practically okay. So Ciri and Geralt, they already had, by the time Ciri gets to Kaer Morhen, she already sees Geralt like a father figure, okay? They already had an established relationship because they had that interaction with Brachiolan Forest, which they cut out. Actually, no, they didn't just cut it out. They readapted that, and Ciri just went there by herself. So they changed that. So Ciri and Geralt's relationship is not the same. Geralt and Yennefer's relationship is not the same. And also, Yennefer and Ciri's relationship is not the same, because Yennefer was teaching in Blood of Elves. Yennefer was teaching Ciri at the temple. She was doing that. That's how Yennefer and Ciri met, is because Geralt and Triss and Ciri all went to the temple, and then I don't remember exactly what exactly happened with Triss. She ended up leaving, and Geralt left with, like, they basically dropped Ciri off at the temple, and then Yennefer, he contacted Yennefer to have her go to the temple, and he was like, hey, can you teach Ciri? And she was like, yeah, sure. And so she goes there, and then Ciri and Yennefer create a bond, a mother-daughter bond during that time, and it ends with them leaving the temple to go and take Ciri, because they were going to take Ciri to enroll her at Aretuza. That's how this book is supposed to end. Not with a, what the heck was that? What was this? What was this supposed to be? They go back to Kaer Morhen, and then Ciri gets possessed by this demoness lady, and she kills a bunch of No. Actually, I kind of get why they had the extra Witchers there, because guess what? Eskel, Lambert, and Cohen, and Vesemir, and Geralt were the only Witchers at Kaer Morhen. They were the only ones. And also, Eskel doesn't die. Cohen is the only Witcher in this series that dies. Well, from those, out of those 5, he's the only one who dies, except for maybe, technically, I guess, Geralt, but also, at the end of Season of Storms, Geralt is still alive, so technically not. But Cohen is really the only one who is not, he's the only one who doesn't survive, and he dies in a later book, in a war. So, none of this happens. It's like the writers were given a brief outline of the story, and it was just okay, create a story off that. That's it. That's all they gave. The screaming, that power just doesn't even exist. Like they even talk about like magic coming from chaos energy. It's like, no, actually they talk about fire, and Yennefer in the books does use fire. I believe many mages they got me saying mage because they call them sorcerers and sorceresses in the books. At least, and I can this I can kind of forgive because it's more of a translation kind of thing. So it's probably a different version of the translation or whatever. But they use fire. They create fireballs. Ciri even creates fireballs. No. See, the thing is they're supposed to, they draw the magic from the ground, from water, and Yennefer specifically teaches Ciri not to draw energy from fire, not to create fire, not just to draw from fire. And that is where this whole thing is just it. And so no. So that definitely doesn't. That's none of that is correct at all. At the beginning of the first book, it's supposed to be believed that Geralt and Ciri were dead, and here they have Geralt thinking that Yennefer is dead, instead of Yennefer thinking that Geralt and Ciri are dead. Also, everything like half this show is just like absolutely nothingness. It's just like nothing. Like it's all completely fabricated. All the stuff with Nilfgaard, all that stuff that you see with Fringilla and Cair and Yennefer for the most part until she gets with Geralt. Well, actually, you know what? Everything with Yennefer is completely fabricated. Most of this entire show is completely fabricated. Almost nothing that happens in this entire show actually happens. Almost none of it actually happens. Also, they completely removed the squirrels, the square tile. That's just I don't know. Maybe the elves are gonna turn into the square tile. I don't know. In the very last episode, the thing that really irked me was that they revealed stuff that you don't get to like the last Tower of Swallows, I think, is. No, it's Lady of the Lake that you actually find out that Ciri has the power to teleport, and it was either. I think it was Lady of the Lake that you find out that Emir von Emrys was actually Duny, her father. I think that's when you actually find out. Not this early. There's only a handful of characters that I think they actually got right, and not what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is not that I think that they got these characters that they're doing the things that they were doing in the books. No. Because none of the characters are like that. Here's some of the characters that I actually feel like they at least kind of felt right. There's Dandelion. I think Dandelion and Geralt were pretty good with pretty good casting. Cair, I liked Cair, but like he has way more to do here than he had in the book. Tissaia, I think she was good. Rience, I think he's a good casting. Vesemir, Mousak, and Yarpen Zegre. I think those were good characters. I like those guys. Everybody else was either miscast, they don't look like the characters, or they don't feel like the characters. Everybody else, I don't have very high hopes for season 3. If I wasn't making this video, I don't think I would. I probably would have stopped at the early episodes of season 2. I don't have very high hopes for season 3. I don't. I can actually see why Henry Cavill wanted to leave The Witcher, because they have no interest in telling the story of The Witcher. They have no interest in it at all. They don't care. They just don't. They want to use the names, the places. They want to use that. They don't care about the story. No. Okay. We're gonna see what Matt thinks about this now.
Personally, I really like season 2. I believe, like at the end of season 1, Geralt finally kind of meets Ciri, and I feel like that's where you kind of wrap up all of the timelines. And so now going forward and everything's kind of in current time, right? So it makes it a lot easier to just follow the series, follow the storyline and everything, instead of being like, all right, well, this happened, however many years before this, and whatever. And so I really liked, I can't remember the place, but when Geralt sees Ciri go and stay at that mansion right after he finds her, and his buddies, turned into that boar and everything else like that. I just as like an opener to the season, I felt like that was a really entertaining way to start. The Brixa was an interesting animal, I guess, to kind of like meet and introduce with that. And then, just everything going on with Kaer Morhen, him getting there, dealing with the Lesh, and then, one of the brothers, turning into like a Leshy mutant, if you will, that's kind of new. It was interesting how they ended up deciding to making a story without much there, I guess, right? Like you'd think like you're just there to train, get some rest over the winter, make some potions. Not, it seems like a dull time to kind of really be in there, and they managed to put in some excitement. You really get to see Ciri's growth and her determination of wanting to be something and something great, while she's trying to kind of figure herself out and everything. So I felt like it made a pretty good season, and then of course they got to fight, different mages. He takes her to that place of learning and everything.
Oh, goodness gracious me. I tell you. So, season 3 of The Witcher. Finally got it done. Gosh. It was tough to get through. At least the first half was really tough to get through. Oh my gosh, I was so bored. Because I don't really care about this whole thing that they're doing that's not in the books. I'll be honest. I don't care about what they're doing. But, okay. Season 3. Overall, it was actually an improvement over Season 2. I'm a little shocked by that. But they actually follow the storyline of The Witcher. So, like I said with Season 2, they're at this point they're just kind of following the events. Actually, and this time they actually are following the event for the most part, sorta, kinda, mostly following the events, and then they're still writing their own story. Like in the first half, and like the first 4 episodes, I was like, it's just gonna be easier if I write down the things that they did right, rather than the things that they did wrong, because the list of things that they did right is a shorter list than the things that they did differently. But in the second half, things actually, mainly I guess probably because this action actually picks up and whatnot, so they're just like, oh yeah, we'll just kind of use a lot of that. So they actually do a lot of the things, and as for Geralt and Ciri, they are actually in the right places that they're supposed to be at the end of Season 3, versus, not like they were at the end of Season 2. But Yennefer, nope. Of course, you can't have it all the way. You just can't. Okay, let me go through some of my notes. I think in Season 2 I mentioned there are no square tile. That is because They want to build up the square tile because they've been focusing on the entire, like, throughout all of season 2 and 3. They've been focusing on Francesca and her elves and everything like that. Which none of that, all of that is made up for the show. All of that. There is no focus on the square tile or the elves or any of that in the books, because they're just like the elves, and they're kind of like a side thing. They don't actually focus on the elves at all. So all of that's made up. All of that stuff you see with Francesca, all of that's made up. Even the child, all of it. That's all made up. So, in Blood of Elves, or season 2 of this show, the square tile are already a thing that has been around for a while. So, like, that's why I was saying there's no square. But now they are square tile, but they also don't have squirrel tails, because that's why they were called squirrels, because they had squirrel tails. Whatever. They have the square tile now, so there's a correction there. In the first, like, episode or two, they really, like, so in the first episode of season 1 or season 2, they were still kind of doing, you know, they did one of the short stories. And episode 1 of season 3, they're doing, that was supposed to be like a continuation of season 2. All that's in a wrong position. Like, everybody's in the wrong position there, because at the start of Time of Contempt, you have Ciri and Yennefer, who Yennefer is taking Ciri to Aretuza, and Geralt is kind of on his own, and you don't really know what exactly he's doing. He's trying to I think he's hunting down Ryans. That's so, like, the bank and market thing all that happened. Mostly the same. That's honestly at this point mostly the same. Sorta is about the best you get with this show. That's the best you get. And they had to, do this whole thing with, like, Yennefer training Ciri, because they wasted all the time that it was in the first book. They had to make up for it, so they had to rush that bit. And then Yennefer just all of a sudden starts calling Ciri Ugly One for no reason. It's like, why are you in the book? She starts calling Ciri Ugly One from the first minute she meets her. She immediately is like, basically is just like, you're ugly, you're not pretty, I'm beautiful, you're not, you're Ugly One, that's what I'm gonna call you. And it wasn't until later on that she started calling Ciri. So that was, yeah. The basilisk, the bit with the basilisk, that was in the book. Cool. I was glad to see it, honestly. And so when I started on the second half, I was like, when we got to episode 5, and we're like, okay, so we're in Aretuza, we're in, we've got, and it's actually a banquet that wasn't hosted by Yennefer, because Yennefer didn't free Caer, and because she never lost her magic. So all of that, like, most of Yennefer's stuff is just nonsense. It's all stuff that was made up for the show. So this whole thing that they think, Yennefer did not put that together. She did bring Geralt there and everything like that. And they weren't suspicious, and they weren't trying to figure all this stuff out, and they weren't suspicious, and they weren't thinking that there was a plot happening and everything like that. All of that's made up for the show, all of it. So, but out of all of the episodes, episode 5 felt the most accurate. Especially because after all of that happened, and actually Geralt was actually completely unsuspecting, because the interesting thing is that after the whole banquet thing, and Geralt and Yennefer are off in their bedroom and everything like that, like early the next morning before sunrise, Geralt gets out to take a piss in a bush, and he discovers that, like, he sees Dijkstra, like, dragging a sorcerer or sorceress, one of the two, I don't remember exactly who it was, dragging, like, a sorcerer off in chains. And he just happens to stumble into the plot, and that's why he gets dragged along, and he has a sword on his back. And then Dijkstra's like later on, after like throughout the whole thing, like so Geralt just kind of starts getting himself accidentally mixed up into the whole thing, and then when he finds out that Ciri, they're gonna go capture Ciri, he runs to the tower, and there's this whole battle fight thing that happens and everything. So like the whole thing with Ciri, Yennefer, and Geralt like being in the field way away from Aretuza, like they should have just gotten out of there. If this was in the book, they would have just left. They would have just booked it. But no, they were in the middle of everything, and then Ciri was trying to escape. Actually, I think Ciri was she got cornered by Cair, and I think she wounded him, but didn't have the guts to kill him. And Rience was not killed. Actually, Rience was killed by Ciri in the last book, Lady of the Lake. She kills him eventually in the last book. So he doesn't die here. So that is one big thing that they just threw out the window, because Rience is used quite a bit later on. Ciri's supposed to, like, she gets trapped, she goes into the tower, because like that's like the only thing, the only way out. And then Geralt is like guarding the tower, and that's when he has his combat with Vilgefortz. Instead of being in a cave over here, like literally, Geralt's in a cave here, Vilgefortz is here, the tower is out here. Vilgefortz could have just gone and gotten her. He didn't have to face Geralt. But in the book, he did. And then Vilgefortz messes Geralt up, which I was glad that actually happened, especially considering the fact that I was actually starting to think that they were going to really swap things up, because I have no faith in the writers here. Okay, I thought they were going to mix up Vilgefortz and Stregobor, because like they were having like Stregobor act all like weird and everything like that. I was like, are you going to make This is how little faith I have in the writers, is because I thought they were going to give the Vilgefortz's role to Stregobor. I don't know, but they didn't do that, thankfully. One of the biggest differences is that Yennefer was like, she just kind of disappears. Like, so what ends up happening is, so like Geralt, he goes out and he accidentally gets involved in this whole coup thing, right? Like with the Redanians who are trying to get out all the traitors, right? And Geralt accidentally gets himself involved in all that. You have no idea where Yennefer and Ciri are. Ciri's actually, instead of with Dandelion and Radovid, Ciri is actually with like the students of Aretuza, and because she's supposed to be one, right? She's supposed to be getting accepted into Aretuza. And then Yennefer ends up taking Ciri to the temple, and Ciri like did this whole prophecy thing, passed out, and then ended up she ended up getting like taken out of there. And you don't hear about whatever happened to Yennefer till really far down the line. I think it wasn't like the end of Baptism of Fire, I think, is when you actually find out what happened to Yennefer. So she did not come out of this like you see in the series. Like she's gone for like most of the next season, is what actually is supposed to happen. And she was turned into a statuette and taken by, I want to say Fringilla, but of course they didn't do that. And they're having Yennefer be the one to put together the new chapter, like the new lodge. Like that's what they're doing here. And because that was Philippa Eilhart is the one with Triss and Keira Metz. They're the ones who put together the new lodge. And it looks like they're having Yennefer do that. Also, as soon as Yennefer got out of being a statuette, she immediately went to try to find Ciri, which is not something that they're having here. They're like, oh, Yennefer's just going to be like, oh, I'll trust Geralt. And she's like, no. In the books, Yennefer's like, I got to go find Ciri. She's doing everything she could to find Ciri and wasn't going to stick around to the lodge. And in the desert, that was interesting to see all that. Ciri didn't do all those hallucinations. She didn't see Falca. She didn't see her mother. She didn't see her grandmother. But the thing I wanted to mention, big difference with like the fire magic and everything. In the fire magic, so I think I mentioned in a previous segment that like they talk about like they draw their energy from chaos energy. It's actually elemental energy. And in this case, Ciri actually starts off by trying to use the things she learned as a sorceress. She tries to conjure up She conjures up a ball of light. She tries to, heal herself. She does these sorcerous things, and then but she runs out of energy because she can't draw from the surrounding stuff. She can't find water to draw from, and so then after Little Horse gets injured, she's like, oh, I could create a fire because you can get magic out of fire, and this is kind of where because they do actually depict her drawing from the fire in the show, but they don't usually use elements, and they say fire magic is forbidden, and what they usually are saying is that using fire magic is forbidden, but it's really you drawing from fire magic, because pretty much what you see in the show happens, and it's like she draws up her fire, she draws in the fire magic, basically becomes a god, becomes super ultra powerful. Then Falca talks to her and she tries to tempt her towards really dark and evil thoughts, and then Ciri gives up her power. She gives it away, and then she just is left with no emotions, and then she gets found, and then she joins the squirrels under the name Falca. So that is all accurate. And then as far as what happens afterwards for Geralt from the Island of Phaneuf thing, Geralt is taken by Triss to Brokilon Forest, which he has been there before. Okay, I might add, because they removed that whole section of Ciri and Geralt in Brokilon Forest because it was just Ciri there, but actually it was both of them, so they removed that bit. And so Geralt gets taken to Brokilon Forest. He actually gets healed by the Dryads of Brokilon Forest, and not Yennefer. So that just the whole thing. And Dandelion comes in a month later, and then he gives Geralt the news, and yeah. So let's go see what Matt thought of season 3.
I didn't dive into season 3 right away because everybody knew it was Henry Cavill's last season as The Witcher. To me, it sounded like a lot of people were kind of trying to boycott it a little bit, to put the heat back on Netflix for this. And then just some of the reviews I had read before, it sounded like they completely botched the entire season in relation to the books, which alienated a lot of fans. And so I opted to still kind of watch it, not necessarily seem, super enthusiastic about it, but I watched it, wanted to see what it was looking like and everything. Overall, I didn't mind it too bad. When you're talking about Vilgefortz and the, what happened with Istrid and all that whole timeline, you definitely have to kind of watch that episode a couple times to understand that it's different perspectives being woven into all that, so you can understand the full scope of what's about to happen next. But yeah, I guess to me it felt like, and I might have been slightly biased having read previous reviews, but it definitely felt like the writers went away from what The Witcher is and started just doing whatever they felt like. I did personally like the last couple episodes where it was pretty much only Ciri, her out in the desert and seeing things and everything else like that. I felt like it brought a lot more into her character, and then also leaving some questions to kind of, build off of in the future. But as a whole, it was interesting, but it felt like it was a different kind of Witcher. It wasn't the same Witcher of the previous 2 seasons.
So what are my final thoughts on the Witcher TV show as a whole? Overall, like I said at the beginning of this video, this is the worst adaptation I have ever seen. This is I thought The Chronicles of Narnia was bad. I thought The Hobbit was bad. Those are actually looking pretty good now. That's what I mean. I genuinely did not care enough to pay attention to the writing or the characters or character development. I just was like I just got to a point where I just was like checking off boxes, like, did they do this story point? And I was just checking off boxes because I was just so bored. I think in the first half of the season, I just was barely even paying attention for season 3. I was just barely paying attention because I was like, I don't care what your BS that you want to make up for lost time. I don't care about any of that. And I was here to watch The Witcher, and what I didn't get was Witcher. And actually, speaking of which, Matt, now that Henry Cavill is out, will you continue to watch The Witcher?
I mean, honestly, I'll probably watch it. I'll probably at least watch 1 or 2 episodes to see how they adapt him in, how they swap him out and everything. I think looks wise, they'll be able to cover that up pretty easy. What's going to be really interesting is how they do the voice, right? Because Geralt's voice is it's very unique, and we'll find out if Liam Hemsworth can do, something similar, because I know a change in the voice is definitely probably going to ruin it a little bit. And then we'll just kind of just see how the writers, put that next season together and how they get, how it gets produced and everything. And, I'm not, just as like an average fan of The Witcher and everything, I'm not on that purist side of, not only is it not with the books, but now they're swapping actors and I'm going to boycott it and everything else like that. I don't know that I'll be like clamoring to watch it as soon as it's released on Netflix, but I'll probably get to it, at least watch an episode or 2 just to see how they do with it, and then kind of go from there. But losing Cavill is definitely a massive blow to the franchise, and that's probably why they're going to do season 4, season 5, and call it good.
Personally, I couldn't care less. Henry Cavill is great, but him leaving is like the least of its problems. It's got so many other problems other than Henry Cavill leaving that it doesn't make a difference to me. It's gonna be trash either way. Like, it's probably going to be like 25% accurate at best, and that's if Geralt's bits are like 100% accurate. And like, that's because what they're going to do is they're going to have 4 different things that they're going to be going across. And like Yennefer and Ciri, they're barely in the Baptism of Fire, which is what season 4 would be adapting. And then they're going to focus on Nilfgaard, and like none of that. Like, there's very little Ciri. There is almost no Yennefer. Geralt is the primary focus, and they can't do that. They can't. They couldn't do it in season 1. They couldn't do it in season 2. Yeah, they couldn't really do it in season 3 either. Yeah, they just couldn't do it. They have to separate it all out so that Geralt only takes up a small portion, and so it doesn't really matter anymore. Honestly, to me, it's like I don't really care. I don't think I'll watch season 4 anyways, not unless I can get a really good video out of it. If I could get a good video with a lot of views, I might do that. But honestly, I can't see myself caring enough to actually watch it. It's just not. It's just nothing, pretty much at this point. It's not worth it. Well, let me know if you guys enjoyed the video or not. You leave a like or subscribe if you guys want to see more of these kinds of videos where I just kind of go through. I don't know. I probably won't do something like this big again with a TV show, like 3 seasons. That's kind of big. But I do have a video on Arcane coming up here pretty soon. I'm going to watch through that and review it because I haven't seen Arcane before. So subscribe if you guys want to see that. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao.